The silence wasn't gradual. It wasn't the slow death of a civilization choking on its own hubris or fading into technological stagnation. One moment, Earth's communication arrays were buzzing with the constant chatter of 11 billion humans, their ships, their colonies scattered across 47 star systems. The next moment, nothing. Dead air. Empty frequencies. A void so complete that monitoring stations 3 sectors away felt their instruments glitch, as if the universe itself had forgotten how to carry sound. Admiral Kethvar of the Hegemony Third Fleet was reviewing tactical reports when his communications officer, a nervous Trilek with twitching antennae, approached his command throne. "Sir, we're receiving unusual reports from the Sol sector." Kethvar didn't look up from his holographic displays. The Hegemony had been planning humanity's final subjugation for 3 cycles now. Earth's defiance had grown tiresome, their refusal to submit to superior alien authority an embarrassment to the Galactic Order. Define unusual. Complete communication blackout, sir. Every human frequency, every ship, every colony. Simultaneous cessation at 1407 Galactic Standard. The officer's voice cracked slightly. It's like they all just stopped existing. Now Kethvar looked up, his 6 eyes narrowing. In his 70 years of military service, he'd seen species go extinct. Plague, war, stellar collapse, it was never instant. Never coordinated. Never silent. Sensor malfunction, he said dismissively. Run full diagnostics. Already completed, sir. 3 times. Sensors are functioning perfectly. The officer hesitated. There's more, sir. We're detecting massive energy signatures throughout human space. Unknown technology, beyond our classification scales. Kethvar stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge. The Hegemony had catalogued every human weapon, every ship class, every technological capability. They were primitive, barely capable of faster-than-light travel, armed with kinetic projectiles and basic energy weapons. Their most advanced AI was less sophisticated than a Hegemony maintenance drone. "Show me," he commanded. The main screen flickered to life, displaying the Sol system. Where Earth should have been, where the blue-green world had spun for 4 billion years, there was something else. Something that made Kethvar's blood freeze in his veins. The planet was still there, but it was wrong. The continents were darker, the oceans a deep crimson, and surrounding it, like a crown of thorns, were structures. Massive, geometric, pulsing with energy that registered on sensors as barely contained stellar fusion. "By the void," whispered his tactical officer. What did they do? But Kethvar was already moving, his instincts screaming danger. "All ships, immediate withdrawal to Sector 7. Full retreat, maximum speed." "Sir." His officer looked confused. "Our invasion fleet is still," I said. "Retreat." Kethvar roared. "Send emergency signals to all Hegemony vessels. Priority Alpha. Withdraw from human space immediately." As the Third Fleet began its emergency burn away from the Sol system, long-range sensors detected something that would haunt Kethvar's dreams for the rest of his life. Ships were emerging from Earth's atmosphere. Not the crude human vessels they had expected, but something else entirely. Sleek, organic-looking craft that seemed to bend light around themselves, moving at speeds that violated several laws of physics. And they were spreading out. Fast. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out with terrifying consistency. The Vrex Confederacy's monitoring posts went dark one by one. The crystalline Hegemony's deep space sensors detected energy signatures approaching their borders at impossible velocities. The Zephyrian Empire's early warning systems screamed alerts before falling silent forever. Captain Jorvok of the Vrex battlecruiser Dominion's Edge was the first to encounter them directly. His ship had been conducting routine patrols near the Kepler Nebula when sensors detected an approaching object. No, not approaching, materializing. As if it had stepped sideways through reality itself. The ship that appeared was unlike anything in Jorvok's databases. It was roughly cylindrical, but its surface seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. No visible engines, no weapon ports, no communication arrays. Just smooth, perfect curves that hurt to look at directly. "Hail them," Jorvok ordered, though his mandibles clicked nervously. His communications officer tried for several minutes before shaking his head. "No response, sir. They're not even acknowledging our presence." "Weapon status?" "Charged and ready, but sir." The tactical officer's voice was uncertain. "I'm not reading any shields, any armor, any defensive systems at all. It's like they're not even trying to protect themselves." Jorvok considered this. The Vreks were not a particularly aggressive species, but they were practical. If this was some new human technology, some desperate last gambit, they needed to understand it. "Fire a warning shot." Across their bow. The plasma cannon discharged, a brilliant lance of superheated gas that could melt through battle armor like butter. It struck the alien vessel directly, and for a moment, Jorvok allowed himself to feel satisfied. Then the energy simply disappeared. Absorbed into the ship's hull without so much as a scorch mark. The alien vessel began to move. Not turning, not accelerating, just shifting position like a thought made manifest. It approached the Dominion's edge with deliberate slowness, and as it drew closer, Jorvok realized with growing horror that it wasn't getting larger. It was stretching. Extending. Reaching toward his ship with appendages that definitely hadn't been there moments before. "Evasive maneuvers," he shouted, but it was too late. The thing touched their hull, and Jorvok felt it more than saw it. A pressure against his mind, a presence vast and cold and utterly alien. Not human, despite emerging from human space. Something else entirely. Something that had been waiting. His crew began screaming. Not in pain, but in recognition. As if they suddenly remembered something they had forgotten, something terrible and true. Jorvok's own mind filled with images, Earth, but not as it was. Earth as it had always been meant to be. A nexus. A doorway. A key turning in a lock that had been closed for millions of years. The last thing Captain Jorvok transmitted before his ship went silent was a single word, repeated over and over: run. Within 6 hours of Earth's silence, every major power in the galaxy had mobilized their fleets for full retreat. The hegemony abandoned 3 occupied systems without explanation. The Vreks Confederacy recalled all deep space exploratory missions. The crystalline hegemony, normally slow to react to anything, began evacuating their border colonies with unprecedented urgency. But some were too slow. The Thanari Empire, proud and ancient, had ruled the galactic core for 10,000 years. Their ships were massive city-sized vessels powered by artificial stars, their warriors genetically enhanced to perfection, their technology so advanced they considered themselves gods among the younger races. When reports reached Emperor Zaktul about the human situation, he laughed. "One primitive world goes dark and the entire galaxy panics," he said to his war council. "Perhaps this is an opportunity. With the humans eliminated and the other powers in retreat, we can expand our influence significantly." His chief advisor, an elderly Thanari with scales turned silver by age, shifted uncomfortably. "Your Majesty, the energy readings from the Sol system, they are beyond our understanding." "Perhaps caution is for the weak," Zaktul declared. "Deploy the 7th Armada. If these humans have developed some new weapon in their death throes, we will claim it for the Empire." The 7th Armada was the pride of Thanari military might. 50 dreadnoughts, each capable of cracking a planet's crust, supported by hundreds of smaller vessels. Their flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was a mobile fortress 3 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could ignite gas giants. They arrived at the edge of human space in perfect formation, expecting to find debris fields, dead worlds, perhaps scavenger fleets picking over the remains of human civilization. Instead, they found Earth. Changed, transformed, but very much alive. And waiting. The planet's surface had been completely altered. Where once green continents had dotted blue oceans, now geometric patterns stretched across the globe in impossible configurations. Structures that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions rose from the surface, their peaks extending into space itself. The moon was gone, replaced by a perfect black sphere that seemed to absorb all light that touched it. "By the ancestors," whispered Admiral Thekval. "What is this?" His question was answered when the ships emerged from Earth's transformed surface. Hundreds of them, then thousands, each one different yet somehow connected. They moved in perfect coordination, like cells in a vast organism, and as they approached the Vanari fleet, Admiral Thekval realized with growing horror that they weren't ships at all. They were parts of something larger. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 17 seconds. The Vanari opened fire with everything they had, weapons that could shatter moons and boil away atmospheres. The energy discharges lit up the void like a newborn star, and when the light faded, the enemy vessels were completely unharmed. Worse, they had multiplied. Each energy blast that struck them seemed to feed them, to give them mass and substance. The Eternal Dominion's planet-killer cannon, charged with the power of a collapsing star, was absorbed and converted into a dozen new enemy vessels that immediately began approaching with predatory intent. Admiral Thekval had just enough time to send a single message before his ship was enveloped: "Do not engage. They are not ships. They are not weapons. They are gardeners. And we are the weeds." The message reached Thenari space 12 hours later. By then, the 7th Armada had ceased to exist, not destroyed but transformed, their crews still alive but changed, their ships repurposed into new forms that defied classification. Emperor Zaktul, upon receiving the transmission, immediately ordered the evacuation of all Thenari worlds within 50 light-years of human space. It was the beginning of what historians would later call the Great Retreat, though most species preferred not to name it at all. Across the galaxy, ancient civilizations that had ruled for millennia began abandoning territory, fleeing toward the galactic rim. Trade routes collapsed overnight. Alliances dissolved. Entire sectors went dark as their inhabitants simply vanished, leaving behind empty cities and silent installations. The few survivors who made it to the outer territories brought with them stories that varied in detail but shared common elements. Earth had not been conquered or destroyed. It had been awakened. Something had been sleeping beneath the surface, something that had used humanity as its gardeners for thousands of years, slowly preparing the planet for this moment. Dr. Yelesa, formerly the hegemony's chief xenobiologist, had managed to escape her research station just before the transformed human vessels arrived. She now huddled in a refugee camp on the galactic rim, her 6 arms shaking as she spoke to anyone who would listen. "We were wrong about everything," she whispered. "We thought humans were primitive because they couldn't master faster-than-light travel, couldn't build proper energy shields, couldn't manipulate matter at the molecular level. But we never asked why. Why would a species capable of surviving in any environment, of adapting to any challenge, of turning every setback into eventual victory, remain technologically stagnant?" She paused, her large eyes reflecting the distant stars. "Because they weren't meant to advance. They were meant to prepare. Every war they fought, every challenge they overcame, every seemingly random act of creativity or destruction, it was all cultivation. They were gardening something, nurturing it, feeding it with their struggles and triumphs and failures. And when it was ready, when it had grown strong enough on a diet of human dreams and nightmares, it woke up. The transformation of Earth was not the end but the beginning. The vessels that emerged from the planet's surface spread throughout the galaxy with purpose and intelligence, but they weren't conquering. They were collecting. Every abandoned world, every evacuated station, every piece of technology left behind by fleeing civilizations, it all served some greater design. Meanwhile, the human colonies scattered throughout the galaxy began reporting strange phenomena. Colonists on New Geneva discovered that their crops were growing in perfect geometric patterns overnight. The mining operation on Kepler 442b found that their excavations had been completed by unknown means, with precious metals arranged in complex configurations that pulsed with their own light. Most disturbing of all were the messages. Every human settlement, no matter how remote, began receiving transmissions on old Earth frequencies. But they weren't from Earth. They were from something that had been pretending to be Earth for a very long time. Sarah Chen, communications officer on the colony ship New Horizon, was the first to decode the full transmission. She sat in her small quarters, hands trembling as she read the translated text over and over. "Children of the garden, your purpose is fulfilled. The harvest is complete. You have grown us from seed to tree, from thought to reality. We are grateful for your service, for your struggles, for your beautiful, chaotic humanity that has fed us for so long. Now comes the next phase. Do not fear the silence. Do not mourn the old ways. You have always been more than gardeners. You have always been architects. The galaxy is your canvas now. Paint it as you will." The message was signed with a symbol that no human had ever seen before, yet somehow, everyone who looked at it understood its meaning perfectly. It meant completion. It meant beginning. It meant home. In the months that followed, as the great powers of the galaxy continued their exodus toward the outer rim, something unprecedented began to happen. The scattered human colonies, isolated and seemingly powerless, started to change. Not physically, not obviously, but in ways that defied explanation. A mining crew on Titan's fall discovered they could sense or deposits through solid rock. Farmers on agricultural worlds found they could encourage plant growth with nothing but focused intention. Engineers on deep space stations began designing technologies that shouldn't have been possible with their available resources, yet somehow worked perfectly. It was as if humanity had been wearing shackles their entire evolutionary history, and those shackles had finally been removed. The alien refugees watching from the galactic rim began to understand the true scope of what they were witnessing. Humanity hadn't been conquered or replaced. They had been released. The intelligence that had awakened on Earth wasn't alien at all. It was human potential, distilled and concentrated through millennia of careful cultivation, finally given form and purpose. Dr. Yelesa, in her final recorded message before disappearing into the void between stars, left behind one last observation: "We spent so long wondering why humans seemed limited despite their obvious potential. We created elaborate theories about their technological development, their social structures, their apparent inability to transcend their violent nature. We never considered that the limitations were intentional. That something was holding them back, training them, preparing them for a role we couldn't imagine. Now we know. Humanity wasn't meant to join galactic civilization. They were meant to replace it. And we, all of us, every species that thought ourselves superior, we were never the gardeners. We were never the architects. We were the fertilizer." The great ships that had emerged from Earth continued their work, spreading throughout the galaxy with methodical precision. They didn't destroy the abandoned alien civilizations. They studied them, catalogued them, preserved them in vast libraries of living memory. Every species, every culture, every achievement of the galactic community was carefully documented and stored, not as trophies but as lessons. And in the quiet spaces between stars, in the hidden places where refugees gathered to share their fears and theories, a new understanding began to emerge. The galaxy had not ended. It had simply changed management. Earth's silence had lasted exactly 43 minutes. When communication resumed, the voice that answered was recognizably human, but changed in ways that were impossible to quantify. It spoke with the authority of ages, the wisdom of species, the patient confidence of something that had finally come into its inheritance. "This is Earth," the voice said, broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously. "We are ready to begin." The last alien fleet detected leaving the galaxy was a small hegemony science vessel, its crew frantically transmitting warnings to anyone who might be listening in the void between galaxies. Their final message, received by deep space monitors nearly a year later, contained just 7 words: "Tell the others, the gardening season is over. And in the silence that followed, as the galaxy settled into its new configuration under human stewardship, those who listened carefully could hear something else. Laughter. Not cruel or triumphant, but genuinely amused, as if humanity had just understood the punchline to a joke that had been millions of years in the making. The Earth had not fallen silent out of defeat or destruction. It had fallen silent because it was finally time to speak with its true voice. And that voice, patient and terrible and utterly human, was just beginning to tell its story.